Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another amazing episode of Excuse Me, I'm Speaking. This episode is brought to you by the one and only moi. I'm talking about myself. It is me. It is she is Twinkle. Call me Twinkle. Call me Antoinette. As long as you're calling my name, that's all that matters to me. Y'all, for my returning listeners, thank you so much for tuning back in and your continued support. And for my first time listeners, don't click off the pod. I promise you will love it. You will enjoy it. And thank you for your spin, your listen, and welcome to the family. All right. As I start off every podcast, do a quick temperature check. This is going to be real quick because I got a life update for y'all. But I am in a good mood today. I am in a busy mood. Have a lot to accomplish, but I definitely had to get this episode done for you guys. And I'm like pumped and prepared. So we're good to go. Now, I want to give you guys a quick life update because I have been on a mini hiatus. Y'all, life has been lifing. Do y'all ever feel like that? Like life stands still for no one. And, you know, I guess that's a good thing. I'm still like living and breathing and the show goes on, this thing called life. But you know, just been momming, wifing, bossing, working on those things that I need to work on as far as my book and building me towards where I need to go. So I have learned in this journey of life to not like overload yourself with things and to take on what you can. So it's the end of the school year, as I'm sure a lot of you out there that are parents are experiencing that. So it is a very busy time. So that has been taking up a lot of the time for sure. But I do want to send a special shout out to my oldest baby, Anila. Yes, clap it up for Anila. She has turned 9 years old. So we did appreciate her on that day and we celebrated her, so I am happy for that. And also we do have another family member. Y'all, I want y'all to send prayers out for my little puppy Bentley. I guess he's not a puppy, he's technically 2, but he is a Yorkie. He is under the weather. I will be taking him to the vet tomorrow, so prayers up for him. He has not been feeling well. But beyond that, life is lifing. There's like good and there's necessary things you have to take care of. But most importantly, you got to always make sure you take care of yourself. So anywho, y'all, let's get into the question of the day. And the question of the day was actually inspired by a recent trip that me and my family made to the movies. We took our children to see the Super Mario Brothers movie. Yeah, I low-key be liking some of these like little Disney movies, but anywho, with that inspired my question of the day. So the question of the day for today is, what was your favorite video game or board game from childhood? Now, personally, when I was watching the Super Mario Brothers movie, like it made me think about every time I played Super Mario Brothers. But that was not my favorite video game from childhood. Now, I know I'm aging myself by saying this, but I was the proud owner of a Sega Genesis, and I absolutely loved Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, it got no better than that. And maybe it's because I didn't have a Nintendo, so I could only play, like, Super Mario Brothers when I went over to, like, a cousin's house or something, if they had a Nintendo. But I absolutely loved playing Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I was so good at that game. I'm very interested in hearing y'all responses to this question. What was your favorite video game or board game? I know everybody didn't have video games, so that's why I threw board game in there. I was not like a good sport at this, but I loved playing Monopoly, but it was only if I won. I got delivered from that, later on in life. Probably in my 20s. But yeah, Monopoly, I loved playing Monopoly, although it took me hours upon hours getting through that game with anybody, but it was like very enjoyable. And y'all know that's that one game where like nobody actually reads the rules until you get in a disagreement during Monopoly. Then all of a sudden it's like, well, where's the instructions? Nobody's ever read the instructions. Yeah. Yeah. Monopoly is one of those games where it's like, well, how do you play? Yeah. So those two I would have to stick with. It would be Sonic and Monopoly. I would love to hear y'all answers and responses to this question. Please send me your answers to today's question of the day to my Instagram at SheIsTwinkle1. Y'all can DM me or comment on a picture. I love reading your responses. So, yeah, we are moving along quickly today. We are about to get into the meat of the show. Today's show is going to be based around a recent interview that I did watch. This interview was on The Breakfast Club, so you can search for them on YouTube and please go and listen for yourself. But the person being interviewed was Bishop T.D. Jakes. And I have referred to him more than a few times on this podcast, but definitely at the beginning of this year in January. One of his sermons just like blessed my entire life. But he did a recent interview based on a new book that he has put out that is called Disruptive Thinking. And so immediately when you hear that title, you're like, okay, I don't know how that's going to be a positive thing, disruptive thinking. So you're like me, like tuned in, like what is he about to say? Okay. Yeah. So he actually gave the definition of disruptive thinking, and he's putting a positive spin on it. So he said his definition of disruptive thinking is the willingness to disrupt the way you look at life because you understand that mindset controls assets. So he says that assets are not just limited to wealth. Like we all think of assets as like money or like a home. No, assets are also relationships, it's wellness, it's your perspectives on life. So in T.D. Jakes' mind, he says that all of these assets have to be disrupted in order for you to go to the next level. Now, he understands that some people are willing to do it and some people are not. It doesn't make you like good or bad. Everybody is not a disruptor. Just stay tuned in with me, okay? Stick through this with me. He goes into more detail. Even from his definition alone, that allowed me to understand that, okay, so he's saying that for you to disrupt the way you think because your mindset controls your assets. So if assets are supposed to bring value, because when I think of assets versus liabilities. Liabilities take away. Assets bring value. So if assets bring value, then he's saying basically that your mindset controls the value of your life. Ding, 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 ding. I get an A for the day. Yeah. So the host, they relate his whole idea of disruptive thinking to the rise of bedside Baptists during the pandemic. Bruh. Now, for those of y'all that are unfamiliar, of course, T.D. Jakes is a pastor. And so the hosts were telling him that, hey, before the pandemic, I would make sure my family was like physically in church, or like we would at least try to go every now and then. So since you wrote this book on disruptive thinking, I think that kind of relates to the pandemic because it changed the way that people think about going to church, like physically. Is bedside Baptist okay? What are your thoughts on that? Because the hosts were saying, like, I'm not going to lie to you. Ever since church became virtual, me and my family, we sit down with our bacon and eggs and toast and all that and gather around the TV and watch it together. They asked him, what do you think about that? Is that a good form of disruptive thinking? Asking a pastor that question. So, of course, he says his thoughts on that is that you meet people where they are. He says that both of these are beautiful experiences. But, of course, he said that the experience is different when you are in person. So I can definitely agree with that. I've watched church online. I've gone in person. I don't think it's just a church thing. If you've ever been to certain concerts in person, totally different experience. You feel like the excitement and all the fans around you, and it's just like, wow, like you had to be there to experience it. I basically feel like that's what he was trying to say when he says it's different when you attend church in person rather than online, but he's not knocking anyone. So he did go a step further to say that he believes that when Jesus said to go out into all the world, he didn't necessarily mean to go by camel. Now, of course, he's referring to a camel because that's back in like the Jesus days, okay, where they wore the Jesus sandals and all that, and the disciples was walking, they weren't taking Ubers, okay? So he says, now we're fortunate where we can reach people by technology. We can reach them through streaming, through television, through radio, etc. He said, and whatever comes out next, that's what we'll use as well to reach people, because you're meeting people where they are. So just transitioning, they asked him, you know, like what led him to like this point in his life, like being in ministry and writing books and like this whole idea of disruptive thinking. And so I think it's very fascinating to look at somebody on the outside and see where they are in life, whether they're like successful or whether they're going through a hard time in life. Like you always have to tell yourself, like, of course you can't judge a book by its cover, but you don't know their origin story. You don't know what happened in life, whether it was their doing or someone else's doing that led them to where they are now. So it's important to know those pieces of the puzzle before you draw a conclusion about people. And so I really love that he took this opportunity to talk about his childhood. He talked about painful and negative outcomes in his childhood that ultimately drove him to disrupt his family's lineage. In his words, he said he didn't grow up with any silver spoons in his mouth. It was his mother and his father was sick when T.D. Jakes was 10. And by the time T.D. Jakes turned 16, his father had died. So you can only imagine, as a son, that is a very pivotal time in their life where they really need their father, him going into manhood. But he had to deal with that. He had his mother. His mother was very resourceful and she was a strong woman. So, of course, he appreciates her. But that was a hardship he had to deal with his father. He did say his grandfather was murdered by white racists in Mississippi when his grandfather was only 22 years old. It's really important to know people's backstory. So, in his words, he said, pain drove me to him, meaning God, not from him. Thirst makes you go to water, but hunger makes you get up and go eat. Then he goes a step further to say that he used the void to find his heavenly father because he missed his earthly father. Y'all, even learning this information about him, I commend him for where he has gotten in life and the path that he chose to take, because you would never know if you look at his level of success that he's been through all of those painful experiences at such a young age. And he had to make that decision at some point in life to disrupt his thinking and be like, hey, I could be mad, I could be furious, and it would be justified, mad at the world for even the death of his grandfather. His life was taken because of a hate crime, just simply because he was Black. And his father dying at a pivotal age where he needed him. But instead, he redirected that energy and he put it into something positive. Another familiar relationship that is just as important to him is his relationship with his wife. So he described her as being a disruptor as well. So shout out to Sarita Jakes. Yeah, they have been married a very long time, but the host asked him the question, can you have a successful marriage to a person who is a disruptor? Now, he said, absolutely. You just both can't be disruptive at the same time. So I didn't understand that, but I continued listening. He said, somebody has to be supportive and someone has to be disruptive. So meaning that someone has to stabilize the home while the other someone is moving forward. You basically have to have each other's back, because with disrupting comes a lot of criticism, it comes a lot of change, and you're going to have to be able to basically weather the storm. In disrupting things, especially your mindset, you're tearing down what is normal because you're creating something that's better. Yeah, so of course, TD Jakes has been like all over our TV screens for years now. And so they referenced an interview that he did a while back with Dr. Phil, where he specifically talked about the fundamental core of marriage. So he went further to break it down a little bit more in this interview, and I personally really appreciated this, being a married woman myself. But he was saying that basically, instead of interviewing men or women for marriage, people should focus on being friends, which makes a lot of sense. He said friendship should be the core of your marriage/romantic relationship, because romance has its ups and downs. Y'all know the Vivian Green song, like Emotional Roller Coaster? That is my jam. Okay, I love that song. But anyways, romance can be an emotional roller coaster, basically. But if at the core you respect each other and you're for one another, you can survive any turbulence because you have core values, your friendship and your respect for one another. I think it's really good to be friends first. Now, the danger is don't friend zone yourself. And now that's another topic for another day. But anywho, he goes a step further to say his wife is his friend, his adult son is his friend. So in speaking of him saying that his adult son is his friend, because his adult son was present in the building with him during the interview, they mentioned the fact that people say, your child shouldn't be your friend. So they asked him, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like your child should be your friend? He says that, so he's referring to his son. He said when he was a boy, no, they're not friends. When you are a parent, you have the responsibility as a father or mother to be that parent to them. You can't afford to be their friend. You are responsible for saying, no, don't touch that. Don't cross the street. Don't go over there. Sit down right there. Hey, go to bed. Because a kid doesn't know how to parent themselves. He says that the child that you're raising that looks rambunctious, they could be disruptive in a good way. They could be creative. They could be a leader. But sometimes, as parents, we punish our kids down into submission and teach them how to feel like a slave. Yeah, he says, sit down, do what I told you to do because I said so. Yeah, I think we discount kids a lot that they don't understand. So we don't even attempt to explain it to them on their level of understanding. We just say, don't do it because I said so. So naturally, when you're not looking, they're going to do it because you didn't give them an actual reason and explanation. They could listen to you because you're their parent. But even as adults, a lot of the time, we're rule breakers. If we break rules as adults, then why are they not going to break rules as a kid? You got to say more than because I said so. Yes, ultimately, you are the parent, and so they should listen and respect you. But explain it to them because they're capable of understanding, or at least on their level. And then ultimately, they need to be obedient. He goes a step further to even say that we're not teaching our children to think. Disruptive thinking is about the gift God gave us with our brain before we had a laptop. Our brain is a computer. Our brain is a hard drive. The problem is we're not programming our computer with good stuff and knowledge. Yeah, now that was deep. And so that's what he was saying. It's our job as a parent. As a parent, being a disruptor is allowing your kids to be disruptors. Allow your children to discover who they are and look at them closely and guide them towards things that they're good at and allow them to excel. Now he goes to say, no, you should not be your child's friend when they are a child. But when they are grown, that is different. It's when your children are grown, the relationships become more like friends because you can talk to them about what really happened, who you really are, what keeps you up at night. He says parenting is a job and it's lifelong. But as your kids get older, you start reaping a harvest back in terms of loyalty and love. And I thought that was so very true. One thing that he referenced in his interview was Warren Buffett's belief on just life and money and family. He says something that Warren Buffett said that he believes to be true is that no matter how much money you make in life, if when you get ready to die, those that love you the most are not gathered around your bed, you are poor. He said there will be no U-Hauls behind hearses. There will only be mourning families if you're wise enough to protect that. You have to protect that. So even in speaking of family, he has 5 children. And what he tells his children is that you don't have to be a preacher, a successor, or a prop in his play. So basically, like, you don't have to operate within the confines of his life and how he chooses to fulfill his dreams in life. He says you have to write a script that fits your gift and live up to your potential. So he doesn't want his children to mimic him because he says there's nothing worse than being a cheap copy of a great original. Pin drop. I had to rewind. There's nothing worse than being a cheap copy of a great original. Yeah, he said, disrupting the way we think changes the way that we grow. He ends off the interview by referencing his book once again and saying basically what people have to realize is that in being a disruptive thinker, it's going to create criticism and controversy. Okay? So he says it's important to know that you can't become distracted. You can't make it your goal in life to change somebody else's opinion about you, because that itself is a distraction. He says every day that you're doing that, you're not moving forward. Focus on what you believe God gave you. Focus on that assignment. Be what you were created to be and be strong enough in your disruptive thinking to withstand the distractions of those who heckle you and do nothing while they criticize your something. I was like, wow. Yeah, he ended up ending the interview in prayer, but I just thought it was like so very true because even on the last podcast, we talked about like being original, being you. And some people think that even in being yourself, if yourself is different, then that's a disruption. That's a disruption to their norm. But it's not. It's literally just allowing your light from within to shine. It's allowing that gift that God gave you, your brain, to be unleashed. Whatever unique abilities or capabilities that you have, it's putting those things into action. It's believing in yourself. If it is going to bring value to your life and to those around you, then it is positive disruptive thinking. Now, some people may argue, okay, well, like Hitler was a disruptive thinker. No, he was not. Okay, he did not bring value. Actually, he took away. That was horrible. That was not disruptive thinking. He was not a disruptor. He was an earth disturber. Okay, he was disturbing the peace. And we are not promoting that. But if you want to promote positive change, whether it's in your life or in the lives of others, then so be it. Everybody can't be a disruptor, but you know, if there is something about you that is different, don't run from that. Embrace it, because I feel like that's how you live the fullness of your life. Please go check out that interview for yourself. It is on YouTube. It's been on there for a few days now, but it is by TD Jakes and The Breakfast Club, DJ Envy, and Charlamagne the God. It will bless your entire life. And there are really good tips on there if you're into like real estate or business investing and all of that as well too. So please check that out. Now, just wrapping up the show, doing our quick wrap-ups as we always do. Yeah, let's get into some celebrity news. So, womp, womp, womp. Unfortunately, we do have some sad news to report. I wish I had something positive to start with. But Jerry Springer, Jerry. Yes, the talk show host himself. We are sending condolences to his family. He has passed away within these past few weeks that the podcast was on a hiatus. But I did have to acknowledge that Jerry Springer has been a staple in the TV community. If you had local television, then you were able to watch Jerry Springer. You didn't even need cable for that. Yeah, I remember at some point, years after Jerry Springer being on TV, when I found out like it was fake, I was like, oh my gosh. Say it ain't so. It's not fake. No, she really was with her cousin's baby daddy's mama's boyfriend's friend's little sister. Like, what? Yeah, the storylines were outrageous. I should have known by then it wasn't true, and I was crushed when I found out that these were paid actors. But he brought entertainment to the television. Nobody was hurt in these filmings or recording. Nobody was really hurt. And obviously, he left a legacy behind for his family. He had money. He was still running on the air. So if you were alive during those times when talk shows were major, like shout out to Oprah, Sally, Ricky Lake, Mari, Montel. Those were the days. We are going to always just reflect on those days of wild, crazy television. Yeah. Anywho, I hate sad news, but we are going to transition into a little bit of good celebrity news. So for the past month, Jamie Foxx, the actor and R&B singer, from the Jamie Foxx Show all the way to him starring in Ray. He was also I believe he was in Muhammad Ali as well too. He's been in so many different things. He played Ray Charles better than I feel like Ray Charles could have played Ray Charles. He is so amazing at everything he puts his hands on, and he had a health scare. We still don't know what happened to him, what was going on, because he's known to be a very healthy person. But his daughter had posted on social media about a month ago that he was in the hospital, and there were no new reports coming out. Nobody knew what was going on. But this past week, he has been released from the hospital, and they say that he's recovering, and I think he's going through like physical rehabilitation, which is what I had recently read. But that is a great health news update from Jamie Foxx. Us not knowing what was happening, it was a bit scary. I know he was in the middle of filming a movie as well too, and I do believe they had to finish the filming without him. But I am happy that he is out of the hospital, so I will keep you guys updated on any more news that comes out with that. Now, moving right along in streaming news, I like to end on more positive news. I've been living under a rock, okay? Y'all did not tell me that Grey's Anatomy was hitting like that. Y'all, I freaking love that show. I've never been into medical shows or anything about hospitals or emergency rooms or anything, but like I am just locked and loaded. There's 18 seasons and I'm on like season 9 now. It is like so freaking good. So a shout out to Shonda Rhimes. People refer to her shows as Shondaland. That's her universe of shows. So she had Grey's Anatomy, Scandal. If you're looking for anything to binge watch, those are 2 really good ones. She's also the writer of Bridgerton, which is on Netflix. That is a really great one as well. Her recent project that came out was Queen Charlotte, and I believe it's only 6 episodes long. I haven't gotten around to watching it yet, but I've heard great reviews of it, so you guys should definitely check that out. And that is all that I have in streaming news. So to wrap up today's show, I have a really great quote, and I'm sure you guys have heard it before, but the quote of the day is, "Everybody dies, but not everybody lives." Y'all, this has been another episode of Excuse Me, I'm Speaking. Be sure to write me on Instagram at SheIsTwinkle1. Send me your DMs, send me your feedback. As always, this has been your host, SheIsTwinkle, and I am out. Peace. Love you all.